The stage lights were warm, the laughter easy, and everything seemed to be going as planned. It was supposed to be just another night on Jimmy Kimmel Live, filled with jokes, applause, and a nostalgic goodbye to one of television's most beloved stars, Tom Selleck. The legendary actor had come to promote the final season of Blue Bloods, wrapping up a decades-long career filled with mustached detectives, fatherly wisdom, and that calm, gentlemanly charm people expected from him. The audience cheered as Tom walked out in a clean navy suit, smiling gently and waving. He took his seat beside Kimmel, who greeted him with a warm handshake. "You've still got the best mustache in showbiz," Jimmy joked, earning laughter from the crowd. Tom chuckled and replied, "Some things never go out of style." For the first few minutes, it felt like a trip down memory lane. They talked about Magnum PI growing avocados on his California farm, and what it felt like to play the same police commissioner for over a decade. The audience was hooked, and even Jimmy seemed unusually relaxed, leaning back in his chair like he wasn't in a hurry. Then everything changed. Jimmy glanced down at his cue cards and gave a small smirk. "Tom, I gotta ask, you think? Your image of the tough guy, the man's man, is a bit outdated these days." There was an odd silence. It wasn't a joke. Tom's smile faded. He raised an eyebrow, calm but clearly surprised. "Outdated how?" Jimmy leaned in, keeping his tone light but pointed. "Well, we're in a different time now. A more sensitive, inclusive world. Some say that your kind of masculinity, the silent, stoic protector, feels a bit out of place, even harmful." Scattered murmurs came from the audience. Some laughed nervously. Others didn't know what to do. Tom sat up straighter. "So, being strong for your family, dependable, not airing everything out for attention, that's toxic now." Jimmy didn't back down. "Some say those roles helped shape a generation that ignores emotions, that hides weakness, that turns away from progress. And let's be honest, your fan base leans very conservative. Some of them, well, they don't exactly support change." For the first time, a flicker of anger passed across Tom's face. "You brought me here to talk about a TV show, Jimmy, not to hold me accountable for your version of cultural history." The tension was now thick. Cameras kept rolling. No one laughed. Jimmy hesitated, then pushed further. "Okay, but let's talk about something else then. Your military record. You've always been quiet about it, but some old files recently came up, particularly one tied to an incident in Geneva back in the 80s. Something classified. Care to explain?" The air went dead silent. Tom stared at him, not with confusion, but shock. After a pause, Tom stood. "You're out of line." He removed his microphone. The audience didn't know if it was a joke or a part of a bit. Jimmy tried to lighten the moment. "Come on, Tom, don't be like that. We're just talking." Tom didn't turn back. Stepped off stage, but as he reached the curtain, he whispered something caught faintly by the boom mic. "They swore that file was sealed. Who leaked Geneva?" And just like that, he was gone. Back in the studio, Jimmy blinked, stunned. Producers rushed onto the stage. The crowd sat in stunned silence. The broadcast cut to commercial, but by then it was too late. The damage was already done. And the question echoing in everyone's mind was the same. What the hell happened in Geneva? Within hours of the broadcast, social media lit up like wildfire. Clips of Tom Selleck storming off Jimmy Kimmel Live were everywhere, whether TikTok, Reddit, and international news feeds. But the most dissected moment wasn't the argument about masculinity or politics. It was the strange, half-heard sentence, caught just before he disappeared behind the curtain. They swore that file was sealed. Who leaked Geneva? At first, it was brushed off by most viewers as another celebrity memento, frustrated stars snapping under pressure. But for those who listened closely, especially those in certain government and media circles, it triggered alarm bells. By the next morning, obscure blogs and niche intelligence forums were posting theories. What Geneva file? Was Tom Selleck part of an op? Was this staged? One Reddit user with the handle McUltra Dropout posted a thread that quickly gained traction. Tom Selleck served in the California National Guard, but there are gaps in his service timeline. From 1982 to 1984 years he's never discussed. In interviews, a declassified CIA document from the Reagan era mentions a TV asset embedded during Geneva Protocol meetings. Could it be? The post was flagged and taken down within 3 hours. Meanwhile, back at the ABC studios, chaos unfolded. Senior producers were in panic. The network received quiet calls from unnamed government officials asking if the full taping of the show still existed and if that off-mic line was part of the broadcast feed. Kimmel, visibly shaken the next night, tried to joke about it. Apparently, I scared off Magnum P. My apologies to the entire avocado industry. But he didn't bring up Geneva. Not once. The silence was louder than any punchline. Behind the scenes, Tom Selleck had gone completely off-grid. His publicist released a vague statement. Mr. Selleck is taking personal time and will not be, making further comments regarding the interview. But he wasn't at his home in Hidden Valley, and none of his closest colleagues could reach him. It was veteran journalist Marcia Rowan, a former Pentagon correspondent, who decided to dig deeper. She remembered Geneva in 1983. She had been there covering the U.S.-Soviet arms control talks. And she remembered a strange moment from that era last-minute media swap where an unnamed American reporter was pulled from the press corps and replaced by a TV actor on a State Department assignment. When she asked her old sources, one name came up repeatedly in whispers, codename Atlas, and alongside it a single phrase from a redacted Cold War memo. Atlas confirmed visual on Operation Vaultfire. Non-official asset embedded under media cover. Marcia called in a favor. From a retired NSA contact, the name Tom Selleck wasn't in any of the visible files, but one curious entry linked him to a list of Hollywood information couriers used during covert diplomacy between 1982 and 1984. The most sensitive file. Geneva 1983 U.S.-Soviet Intelligence Exchange. Marcia realized this wasn't just a celebrity meltdown. Something from deep inside U.S. history had surfaced accidentally or deliberately, and the world wasn't supposed to know about it. She picked up her phone and left a voice memo to herself. It's Geneva, Vaultfire Atlas. Who leaked it and why now? Outside her apartment window, a black SUV slowed down for just a second, then rolled on. The sun hadn't yet risen over Los Angeles, but the city's underground news circuit was already ablaze. A new anonymous tip had been emailed to 3 major investigative journalists across different time zones. The subject line was simple. It wasn't just Geneva. Attached was a grainy photo. Tom Selleck in uniform, not his National Guard uniform, but something different. The patch on his arm showed no flag, no rank, just a silver triangle. The metadata was wiped clean, but the file name read atlas83_geneva.jpg. Meanwhile, Marcia Rowan was on a flight to Washington, D.C., her NSA contact. The retired analyst named Reed Halvorsen had sent her one final encrypted message before going dark. The file was never supposed to surface. Vaultfire was buried by the Reagan administration under executive privilege. If Selleck knows it's leaked, he's not running, he's hunting. Vaultfire, Geneva, Atlas. Each name carried weight in select circles of intelligence. But to the general public, they meant nothing. And maybe that was the plan all along. Back in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel arrived at his studio under unusual security. ABC executives had been contacted by government officials not from the FCC or DOJ, but from a lesser-known division within the State Department. They asked for the full, unedited recording of the interview. They were polite, a producer later said off the record. but it felt more like a threat than a request. Kimmel didn't know who to trust. His team had reviewed the raw footage, and in the audio pickup from Tom's mic just before it was removed, there was more than one whispered phrase. Along with they swore that file was sealed. He also said something else, barely audible. Not again. Not another Tehran. The reference sent chills down Kimmel's spine. Tehran, 1979. The hostage crisis. But Tom Selleck would have been just 34 then, newly famous from commercials and TV. He was no diplomat, no spook. Or so everyone thought. Later that day, a hidden clip surfaced on a private Telegram channel known for leaking compromised intelligence footage. It showed a younger Tom, not acting, not smiling. He was seated at a long table with Soviet officers on one side and CIA officials on the other. They weren't discussing scripts, they were trading names, spy names, scientist names. It's the type of names that, if exposed, could ignite diplomatic disasters. The channel was taken down within minutes. That evening, Marcia landed in D.C. only to find her contact, Hal Vorson, had gone missing. His apartment was untouched, his phone left charging, coffee still warm. But on his laptop, one word was left glowing on the screen. Cicada. Marcia's. Instincts screamed danger. Cicada wasn't just a bug, it was code. A known reference and old CIA lingo for intelligence operations buried. So deep they existed outside the standard chain of command. Rumors claimed these were missions only 3 people ever knew about: the president, the handler, and the asset. Was Tom Selleck one of them? Marcia checked into a safe hotel, pulled out her encrypted notebook, and began organizing her notes. It was becoming clear this wasn't a story about a celebrity scandal. It was about history, twisted, manipulated, and buried. Back in Los Angeles, a man wearing a gray windbreaker walked into the ABC Studios loading dock. He showed no ID but was let through by security. He walked straight to the editing room where the raw tapes of Jimmy Kimmel Live were stored. 10 minutes later, every copy of the original interview had been deleted from the server, except one. A backup copy hidden on an external drive by an assistant editor named Miguel Torres, who had overheard the strange audio the night before and decided, instinctively, to keep a version for himself. Miguel didn't know what vault-fire meant. But by morning, he'd realized he was holding the only surviving proof that Tom Selleck's past wasn't just secret, it was dangerous. By dawn, Miguel Torres was already on the move. He hadn't gone. Home after his shift, the backup hard drive sat wrapped in a worn bandana inside his backpack, pressed tightly against his spine as he rode. A local train out of L.A., every instinct screamed this wasn't just studio politics or celebrity drama. Something darker had slipped into the public eye and now it was trying to disappear. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Marcia Rowan sat in a private briefing room deep inside an aging library once used by Senate intelligence. She was joined by a man with silver hair and a soft British accent, Sir Geoffrey Lorne, former MI6 liaison to the CIA. She had called in every favor she had to get this meeting. Vault-fire. He repeated grimly. I hoped never to hear that name again. Marcia slid him a still frame from the leaked footage Tom Selleck, flanked by American and Soviet agents in Geneva. Sir Geoffrey exhaled sharply. That wasn't Geneva, that was Bern. And that wasn't diplomacy. That was a burn operation, the kind they cleaned with bleach in silence. Why was Tom Selleck there? Marcia asked. He wasn't supposed to be, Geoffrey said. He wasn't an agent. Not at first, he was a courier. They used actors during the Cold War for drops, crossovers. Big names could travel without suspicion. But Tom, he saw too much. Then he remembered everything. Geoffrey's tone lowered. Vault-fire was the cleanup. Across the country, Jimmy Kimmel sat in a soundproof legal room at ABC, facing a team of federal advisors, not lawyers. Men in suits with no badges. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes and a cold tone, slid a paper across the table. Sign this, Mr. Kimmel. It's a National Security Protection Agreement. Section 7 of the Intelligence Recovery Act. I'm not signing anything until someone tells me what the hell is going on, Kimmel snapped. The woman didn't blink. Then I hope you understand your show will never air again, and neither will you. Back in LA, Miguel met with a freelance reporter named Inez Delgado, someone he'd followed online for her relentless exposes on government overreach and media censorship. She had already begun piecing together fragments from an anonymous dark web post referencing cicada protocol and a phrase she'd never heard before: monarch division. Miguel handed her the drive. You don't understand, he said. They've deleted everything, like it never happened. But I have it all, what Tom said. The look on his face when Kimmel mentioned Geneva. It wasn't acting. Inez looked over her shoulder. They met in a crowded food court in downtown Santa Monica. But even here she felt eyes. Then we need to disappear. Now. As they fled, new footage leaked onto an encrypted journalist network. A pixelated video showed a man in the Swiss Alps Selleck, again younger, again in uniform leading what appeared to be a prisoner exchange. The audio was scrambled, but one phrase was clear. You'll say it was Geneva. But if this leaks, the world burns. Across the ocean in Zurich, an aging archivist at the United Nations quietly took a file from a steel cabinet marked Operation Hollow Fence. He hadn't opened it in 30 years. But now, with the resurfacing of faces he thought were buried. In history, he knew time had run out. He made one call. I need a secure line to Langley. In the final moments of the day, Tom Selleck was spotted by a local fisherman off the coast of Maine, near a restricted lighthouse long shut down after 9/11s. He wore dark glasses and carried a sat phone. The fisherman, curious, called the news later, but the report was pulled before it aired. Tom looked calm. The fisherman said, but his final words, before boarding a private boat and vanishing into the Atlantic, stuck with him. If Geneva out, the rest will follow. And if the rest follows, they'll kill to rewrite it all. The war wasn't in the past anymore. 'Twas back-end this time. It had cameras. A low-hum military jet soared across the Atlantic sky. Inside sat Marcia Rowan, gripping a dossier stamped Restricted Vault Fire Reopened. She wasn't alone. Next to her sat Inez Delgado and Miguel Torres, too, civilians now entangled in a web older than either of them imagined. The jet's cabin lights flickered slightly as turbulence shook them. But what chilled them wasn't the ride. It was the reality that they were heading to Geneva Ground Zero of a secret history. Inez had spent the flight decoding the data Miguel pulled from the studio's buried servers. It wasn't just raw footage anymore, it was metadata, government signed, encryption patterns, and video logs cross-labeled with names that didn't belong in entertainment archives. Langley, Zurich, Vaultfire, Monarch Division. She turned to Marcia. This wasn't about a late-night show. It never was. Marcia nodded. No, Kimmel just asked the wrong question on the wrong night. Or maybe he asked exactly what they feared. Meanwhile, in Geneva, Sir Geoffrey Lorne moved quietly through cobblestone alleys beneath the diplomatic quarters. In one hand, he clutched a key that hadn't been used since 1983. It led to a storage chamber below the now-defunct UN Eastern Conflict Resolution Wing. Geoffrey had worked Black Channel diplomacy for decades. But what was stored in this room wasn't diplomacy. It was a map, a literal intelligence blueprint of Operation Hollow Fence, the Cold War. Mission where American and British agents staged fake diplomatic events, using celebrities and athletes as cover for silent handoffs, blackmail exchanges, and even assassinations. And Tom Selleck, it turned out, had been one of those covers. But he hadn't known, not fully. He was only supposed to transport a diplomatic pouch to burn during a goodwill tour. But the exchange went wrong. A Soviet defector was killed. And Tom, despite himself, witnessed it all. Geneva had marked him. Now, 40 years later, the footage of that day meant to be buried was leaking. Back in LA, Jimmy Kimmel was gone from the public eye. ABC had quietly scrubbed his social media accounts and pulled the episode from all servers. Rumors swirled, conspiracy channels exploded, and yet not a single major network covered it. Oh, but someone was watching. In a dim tech lab buried beneath a private cyber unit in Estonia, a man known only as Murex finished decoding the voice from the leaked off-mic clip. Tom Selleck's words after storming off Jimmy Kimmel lived previously distorted by audio. Interference now rang clear. They swore that file was sealed. Who leaked Geneva? Murex uploaded the cleaned audio to a darknet forum used by ex-operatives and whistleblowers. The reaction was immediate. Dozens of hidden accounts began logging in after years of silence. Among them, Code Black 65, an inactive Mossad contact. Silent Run, believed to be ex-CIA, flagged the post and responded with only one line: "If Holofence is back, no one is safe, not even him." That him was Tom. But where was he? A clue emerged through facial recognition. Satellite surveillance caught a man matching Tom Selleck's description entering an abandoned NATO listening post near the French Alps. It had been offline since 1997, back on the jet. Miguel received a ping from one of his secure devices, an auto-triggered message linked to metadata on the footage he uploaded. It contained a GPS coordinate and a warning: eyes only. Do not trust official channels. Geneva was Phase 1. Phase 2 starts now. As they touched down, Geneva greeted them not with press or security, but silence. No customs. Welcome. Just two black sedans parked at the edge of the runway. Marcia frowned. Those aren't Swiss. They're American plates. But wrong agency. The doors opened and two men in civilian suits approached, flashing old credentials and SC internal security. A division officially disbanded in 2004. The taller one spoke calmly. "Ms. Ruan, you're in possession of classified intelligence that was sealed under the Geneva Accords of '84. That information cannot leave this city." Inez stepped forward. "Then you'll have to kill us, 'cause we're not staying quiet." No one smiled. The man replied, "That can be arranged." Suddenly, the air exploded with a loud crack of flashbang, smoke, screams. In the chaos, Miguel grabbed Inez and Marcia and they dove into the airport stairwell. One of the NSC men shouted into a comms unit, "We've got Monarch activations. Full lockdown." As sirens blared in the distance, Marcia turned to Miguel, heart pounding. "They're not trying to stop a story. They're trying to erase a man. And somewhere deep underground." Tom Selleck stared into an old file marked with his name and a phrase he hadn't heard since 1984. Project Geneva Lockdown. Subject: TS. This wasn't a memory anymore. It was war. And it had just gone global. Underground beneath the snow-covered Alps, Tom Selleck sat alone in a dim, steel-walled bunker's wiring humming faintly with life. In front of him, dusty file boxes sat cracked open, their contents spilling secrets older than most modern intelligence agencies dared acknowledge. There were photos: him in uniform, him standing near a downed Soviet helicopter, him signing something beside a NATO crest he never remembered joining. But it was the final page in the folder that stopped him cold. A mission manifest. Geneva Protocol Asset TS, outcome inconclusive. Compromised. A note had been scrawled across the bottom in red ink. Memory suppression incomplete. Recommend observation or removal. Tom leaned back slowly, breathing hard. They'd used him, not as an actor, not as a patriot, but as a tool. And then they'd tried to erase it all. Above ground, Geneva was in lockdown. Roads were closed under the excuse of a diplomatic cybersecurity threat. In reality, an unmarked multinational force had deployed to capture or eliminate anyone connected to the resurfacing of Vault-Fire Cold War division. Buried so deeply in NATO's past that even active intelligence agents thought it a myth. in a rundown safe house near the city's edge. Marcia Rowan patched a gash on Miguel's shoulder while Inez scanned encrypted radio signals from an old laptop. "They've blacked out communications," Inez said, teeth clenched. "All commercial. Towers are jammed. But military frequency 611 is lit up like Christmas." Miguel, pale from blood loss, glanced at them. "It's him. They found him." Marcia shook her head. "No, that kind of signal means they haven't. They're panicking. If he's still out there, then Tom has something they fear." At that exact moment, Tom's hand hovered over a dusty control panel inside the bunker. A keyhole sat beneath a dead console labeled Channel Violet Panico Emitter. Beside it was a note, aged and written in someone else's handwriting. "Use only if they return." He inserted the key. From space, a dormant satellite flickered to life. One of the Cold War's last hidden tools. Echo 9, built not to attack, but to expose to dump classified diplomatic audio channels from over 90 countries at once into the global web. Back in Geneva, screens inside every government and newsroom began flashing red. Satellite Echo 9. Vault fire leak initiated. The first files streamed live to darknet servers and began crawling onto conspiracy forums, whistleblower pages, and mirror sites across the world. Footage of American operatives posing as diplomats, Soviet assets, smuggled into the UN General Assembly, and real names of politicians who had been compromised. Marcia stared at the data pouring in. "Oh my God," she whispered. "This isn't just about Geneva. This rewrites world history." Inez, almost paralyzed, muttered they used him to keep secrets. Okay, now he's using himself to destroy them. Sir Geoffrey, watching the events unfold from his Zurich flat, quietly poured himself a glass of scotch. "Well played, Tom," he muttered. "But they won't let you walk away now." He picked up a secure phone. "Activate Aurora. Tell them the asset has gone full burn." Across the globe, governments scrambled. Military briefings were held in underground chambers. Allies turned on each other, and a single name began trending across all platforms: Tom Selleck. But the videos weren't fan clips. They were evidence of lies, of war, of betrayal. Kimmel, still held in isolation, saw the news on a secure feed, his jaw tightening. "Holy hell," he whispered. "He really did it." In the chaos, Marcia received a ping. It was a location drop, a single word. Heck, Falcon Sea. Inez blinked. "That's in Germany. What's there?" Marcia's eyes widened. The original vault-fired chamber, the one they said collapsed in '86. Miguel sat upright. "He's going there." Marcia nodded slowly. "No, he's calling us there." Far beneath the Alps, Tom stared into a flickering screen. His voice calm, resolved. He spoke into a headset connected to an old NATO channel. "They built Vaultfire to hide war crimes behind patriotism. They used our faces, our names, mine." He took a breath. "Now I'm burning it all down." A cold, mechanical voice answered. "This is Monarch Control. Stand down immediately. Return to location Alpha. This is your last warning." Tom smiled grimly. "Then you better send more than warnings." He pressed the final switch. Somewhere, a code cracked open a vault sealed for 40 years. Vaultfire had returned. But this time, it wasn't controlled by governments. It was being dismantled by the man they never meant to survive it. And the world was watching. The forest near Falcon Sea was silent, blanketed in snow and secrets. What once stood as an East German communications bunker was now little more than a rusting hatch buried beneath fir trees. But deep below, power had returned. Flickering lights buzzed through aging cables connecting servers thought decommissioned since 1986. Vaultfire had awakened. Tom Selleck stood before a black terminal, sweat on his brow despite the cold. Around him, magnetic tapes whirred, reels spinning like they had waited decades just for this moment. The interface wasn't modern, it was Cold War tech, rugged, untouched by Silicon Valley. but its contents were timeless. Names, photographs, voices. Political trades, assassinations disguised as accidents, elections influenced from behind, smoky. Embassy rooms. Behind him, Marcia Rowan entered with Inez and Miguel. Their faces pale from the journey and what they'd seen broadcast worldwide. Outside news channels were in a frenzy. Journalists whispered the word vault fire like a ghost story coming to life. Governments denied everything. NATO scrambled for damage control. But it was too late. The seal had broken. Tom barely acknowledged. Then he was finishing a command line script, one final upload. He turned. Once this last key is entered, everything gets released, the full database. Inez hesitated. You sure the world can handle it? Tom looked at her, voice steady. The world's been living in the lie. It's time it learns the truth. Miguel spoke up, still weak from his wound. But this, it won't just take down criminals. It could destabilize democracies. The world's balance will shift. Tom nodded slowly. It already has. But better the chaos of truth than the order of lies. Suddenly, a faint metallic click echoed behind them. Sir Geoffrey stood at the doorway, gun drawn, his suit soaked from snow. You always were the noble one, Tom, he said, stepping inside. But nobility won't save you now, or the world. Vault Fire was designed to protect us from ourselves. Mean from accountability? Tom snapped. You don't understand what you're unleashing. Geoffrey's voice trembled now. There are operations in here that saved millions. Some that stopped nuclear wars. If you release this and the entire intelligence framework collapses. Marcia moved toward Tom subtly, shielding the screen. Tom raised his hands calm. I trusted the system once, and you used me. You erased me. You rewrote me. Sir Geoffrey's hand shook. You don't walk out of here if you press that button. Tom looked at him. I'm not trying to walk out. It's a flash of movement. Marcia tossed a metal file at Geoffrey, knocking his aim for just a second. Inez lunged forward, grabbing the pistol, both women crashing into the older man as Tom turned and hit the final keystroke. Upload complete. Sirens wailed from the mainframe. On every major network around the world, Vaultfire's final drop hit. Not edited, not redacted. Unfiltered intelligence from 1971 to 2005. CIA-funded coups. Kai-backed media infiltration. NATO infiltration of peaceful activist groups. Names of world leaders who were once assets, now in power. Even the origins of a scandal labeled Geneva. 1983. Revealing a staged diplomatic bombing to sway. Elections. And then non-screen a face appeared. Young, hard jaw, mustache, asset, TS. Video footage played of a Black Ops mission in Albania. Tom's voice relaying orders in fluent Serbian. He had no memory of it. Until now. Miguel helped Tom sit down. You were a ghost. You were Vaultfire's weapon. Tom whispered almost to himself, and now I'm there undoing. Outside, helicopters thundered in the sky. On vehicles pulled up, armed guards surrounded the forest. But inside the chamber, no one ran. Marcia backed up the files on a hard drive. Inez started a live stream. When the soldiers finally burst through, weapons raised they didn't find. Fugitives. They found whistleblowers. Tom stood slowly, hands up. No fear. I want a lawyer, he said, and a live feed. That night, every screen across the globe aired Tom Selleck's statement. Not as a celebrity, not as a rogue soldier, but as a man betrayed by history, now rewriting it. I was created to protect lies. Instead, I chose truth. The public deserves it, no matter the cost. Vaultfire is real, eh? And so is your right to know. Governments fell, trials began. A new political era was born, not clean, but transparent. And somewhere far from the cameras, in a house overlooking the sea, Tom watched the world begin again, not because he was a hero, but because silence finally had become louder than truth.